Now, I don't normally talk about politics, but you push a man too far, and he's gonna have to push back. There's been a lot of talk about DEI. Now, if you talk to any MAGA people, them boys, they'll tell you that DEI is just a way to hire unqualified LGBTQ and people of color and women. Let's not forget them ladies. Yeah, that's what MAGA would say. Now, what a lot of people don't seem to understand is that there's actually an A. The A is silent in DEI. The A is for accessibility. Now, you might not believe this or not, but I am not a woman, nor am I a person of color or a member of LGBTQ+. I am just a straight white man. However, I am very much disabled. Oh, yeah! As such, I think it's important that we bring attention to issues facing disabled people in the workforce, and how if you remove these policies from the DEIA, it's just going to harm what is already a difficult situation. Now, when we're talking about accessibilities and accommodations, it's just things that employers can and should do to help people with disabilities enter the workforce if they are qualified to hold the job. I'm talking about things like ramps for people with wheelchairs, some type of assistive technology for people working at computers and office jobs. The bare minimum. But I guess that's woke these days, helping people. If you remove these policies, then you're just going to end up making it even harder for people with disabilities to find gainful employment. Let's take a look at some data. A study conducted by the Bureau of Labor Statistics found that in 2024, the unemployment rate for people with disabilities who are between the age of 16 and 64 and who are actively seeking employment was twice that of people without disabilities. Now, why is it that the unemployment rate for people with disabilities who are of working age this high? Well, there's a few reasons. One, and this is actually a much broader issue that impacts everyone, is that the infrastructure in this country is terrible. You're penalized for not owning a car because, God forbid, we build cities that allow people to actually walk to and from their place of business. Oh, we can't have that. Now, hold. You might be thinking, what about the bus? That's a Invader Zim reference for all you Zoomers out there. Look it up. Depending on where you live, public transportation can vary drastically. Put that on top of a crumbling infrastructure, and you can see how public transportation is barely just a bare minimum of what we can do to help people with disabilities go to work. Now, you might also be thinking, oh, it's going to cost too much to hire those people. Incorrect. Let's look at some more data. Depending on the size of the business, companies can take advantage of tax credits such as the Disability Access Credit or the Burial Removal Deduction. This one actually gives up to $15,000 as a tax deduction for companies that provide accommodations and remove architectural structures that prevent people with disabilities gaining employment at their business. It could also just be good old-fashioned discrimination, ableism, because of how disabled people have constantly been portrayed in the media for, 150 years or whatever. It seems that able-bodied people have this idiotic idea that disabled people are stupid and can't do the job they are qualified for. This can easily be ameliorated if we have people with disabilities have proper representation in the workforce. Now, there is a small silver lining with all of this. Because of the COVID pandemic, the employment rate for people with disabilities has started to grow, mainly because of the rise of remote work. According to a study conducted by the National Institute of Health, while it was true that the unemployment rates were around the same for people with disabilities and those without disabilities during the start of the pandemic, During the recovery period, people with disabilities actually had a slight increase in growth over those without disabilities in terms of gainful employment, mainly due to the rise of remote telecommunication work. That's cool, but the fact that it took a global pandemic that killed hundreds of thousands of Americans to slightly increase the employment rate of people with disabilities is not a good look. I'm just saying. So, the next time you talk about DEI, woke, think about how it's actually going to impact not just people of color and women and all the other minorities, but people with disabilities. Think it over. Alright, this has been my first political video. Maybe I'll make some more. I don't know. Goodbye.